Hey Maria, how do you like this wine and cheese?
I don't know. Let me assess. All right, let me get this wine and cheese going.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, I'd like to welcome everyone to SLP's Wine and Cheese. I'm Deb.
And I'm Maria.
And welcome to our podcast.
For the Realistic SLP.
So what's going on today?
All right, first off, since my personal goal is to stop feeling the need to be right, very difficult, but I'm doing it. So, yeah, I was so uninterested with being right last week that I was actually wrong. And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, who cares?
But I still have to fix it.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's understandable. I mean, we should all be accountable for our errors and we should, make adjustments.
Yes, all right. So I was correct where I said that if the client or child is doing sh for s, then that is called affrication, right? Because they're adding an affricate. And that is when they're rounding their lips instead of retracting them. So I was good with that. But I made an error, which I'm okay with.
No big deal.
No big deal. When they're saying s for sh, that is called deaffrication because they're removing the affricate. And that's when they're retracting their lips when they should be rounded. Okay.
And we're ratting on ourselves here because it's not like anybody called us out on this error. No one emailed in was like, actually, you are incorrect.
Right. Well, a lot of times people won't notice your errors because we're all so much inside our own head most of the time. But
that is true.
Yeah. So on a lighter note, our wine and cheese, what are we drinking? Okay, so we have a Robert Mondavi. It's private selection. It's a Pinot Noir. It's from California, and it's from 2015.
Vintage.
Yes. And so it tastes very sweet, but not overly sweet. And I like the acidity. It's not too much. And it has like a smell of strawberries a little bit. I didn't really smell it.
Oh, let me sniff it.
Yeah, you sniff it. Sniff.
Yeah, strawberries.
A little bit.
But then maybe you altered my perception because you put strawberries in my head prior to me smelling.
Anything else that you might smell? Because there's two more scents in here.
I smell wine. And I smell cheese.
One of them is roses and vanilla.
I love roses and vanilla.
And then the taste has like a cherry type of taste, a very fruity taste. And so because of that sweetness, we paired it with a very salty wine, which is feta.
A salty cheese.
So I said salty wine, didn't I?
Oh well, but salty.
I'm okay.
A salty cheese.
I'm wrong. I didn't.
It wasn't really so much wrong. It was an accident. You should also not be so concerned with being wrong, just as you shouldn't be so concerned.
See,
with
I am like one or the other. I need to focus on balance.
Just be in the middle.
Okay.
Do you know you should demonstrate virtue in all that you do?
Wow.
And virtue is the middle ground between excess and deficiency.
Wow, I like that.
So just demonstrate virtue in your righteousness, which means you don't want to be excessively right and you don't want to be deficiently right.
Wow. Whoa. It's a
be in
new
the
goal
middle.
for myself
Yeah.
for next week. All right, so the saltiness of the feta, which is the cheese, I would think it really enhances the sweetness in the wine.
Ah, well, I concur with your assessment.
Good. And the two opposites are attracting here. Like one is bringing out the best in the other.
Great.
The sweetness in the wine and the saltiness in the feta. It's a nice synchrony.
So the two combined is like a harmonious combination.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. So that brings us to, what's our topic of the day?
Assessments.
Assessments.
And as a result, goal writing.
Right. Yes. Hashtag goals.
Hashtag goals.
So an assessment is the evaluation or estimation of the nature, quality, or ability of someone or something. So notice that we said the ability of someone and not the disabilities. Just like the wine and the cheese, we want to locate and bring out the best in everyone around us. We want to see what all of their strengths are, what they are good at, and that's also going to highlight the struggles.
Right. And using their strengths to help them with what they're having a difficult time with. So looking at their strengths and how those strengths are going to help their weaknesses.
Exactly, because if you strictly target their deficiencies, you're not going to see as much progress than if you start somewhere where they do have an ability or a strength, because then you can just expand upon that strength, because that will build confidence in them. But then also you're going to have a better prognosis because you know that your baseline is not 0.
Right. And like what you were saying before, last week about how important confidence is.
Mhm.
It's like such a big point, I think.
Yeah.
And also like in terms of like typically and like neurotypical, when you highlight one part of the brain, it does carry over to different parts. Like when
Right.
you're using one part of the brain that they have a strength with.
Yeah, because
helps.
neurons that fire together wire together.
We need a shirt with that, by the way.
Well, I think I heard somebody else say it. I didn't make that up. So I don't know if it's copyrighted.
I mean, alright.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sue us. slpswineandteas@gmail.com.
We'll give you the wine that we have.
Y'all send you to my lawyer.
Alright.
So there's like all different ways to assess people. We're going to break it down into formal, informal, and dynamic assessment.
Yes.
So if I'm looking at the most common type of evaluation that I do is going to be like my progress report, which is an assessment on our progress of that year. And how I would break that down is I'm going to write the background history. I'm going to say the kid's name, how old they are, what grade they're in, whether or not they've been detained, then they're retained, not detained. Well, you could write that down.
I mean,
that
if
would
you're
be
working
important.
with some high school kids,
Yeah, or
some of them are detained.
Or
adults.
a feisty little 2-year-old. Maybe he
Wow.
was in timeout for a while. We need to write that down.
That's indicative of behavior issues, and that's an issue with cognition and attention and focus.
Yeah,
So.
and you know that time out is actually supposed to be like time out from positive reinforcement, and it just got this like negative connotation to it because people started using it as a punishment. But all you're really doing is like you're taking a time out from reinforcing that behavior that's undesirable. So whatever situation is triggering that behavior, we want a time out from it. So we remove the child from that situation. It shouldn't be viewed as a punishment.
It's negative reinforcement, I believe.
Well, yeah, negative reinforcement is supposed to decrease the likelihood that a behavior will occur. But people think negative reinforcement is doing something mean, like being negative, and that's not accurate. So then after that, so we want to talk about behavior. Do they actively participate? Are they shy? Are they worried? Are they excited? And then hearing, like, do they respond to their name and locate sounds in the room?
Right.
You continue while I throw this dog out of here.
Right, negative reinforcement for the dog. So then looking at the teacher report too, I think is important. If you have some time, let's say if you're working in a school, to interview the teacher and see how the child is doing in class. Also interview any other professionals like an OT or a PT, how are they doing with them and the other disciplines?
Yeah, I have this one boy who gets like a really emotionally charged throughout everyone's sessions. And had I not spoke to the teachers in the OT, I would have thought that he was only crying in my sessions. But communication has led me to understand that this child uses crying and emotions as an escape mechanism to get out of undesirable or daunting tasks.
Makes sense.
So then I would say background information, behavior, hearing and listening, whether or not there was a hearing evaluation. Next would be voice
formal
and fluency.
assessment of hearing would be good.
Right.
So.
Usually, but my sentence is that like so-and-so does not demonstrate any issues in terms of hearing. They respond to their name consistently and they're able to localize sounds. However, it is recommended that they pursue a hearing evaluation.
I always throw in that line like cannot rule out hearing loss because objective testing was not conducted.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have a tympanometer and you do the tympanogram. I've done that before. It's pretty easy. You just like stick it in the ear. That doesn't sound at all.
Stick it in the ear.
Stick it in the ear.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah.
I read the instructions before I did that.
Oh, good.
And I kind of forgot.
That's good at having instructions.
It does.
Just sitting there like that. So then next I would talk about expressive language, and under that category I'm going to talk about their verbal expressive language, and I'm also going to talk about their written expressive language.
Right.
And then just right there, just verbal and written expressive language. Right. The next, receptive language, and that's going to be of listening and writing, so if they're able to understand what they read. or what they hear.
Mhm.
And then maybe like a processing level we could write about in terms of receptive language, like
Yeah.
do they comprehend verbal stimuli in the presence of background noise? Are they able to follow multi-step directions with appropriate detail and sequence?
That's good.
Do they comprehend concepts that are linguistic or basic?
I like to look at also the latency and response, like the
Mhm.
response time. And that's a good tool to even think about on your own
Mm-hmm.
when you're assessing them. So you want to ask the question and you want to give them some time to process it.
Mhm.
And then you want to also measure or time it, and like how long is it taking them to answer you? Is it like 4 to 5 seconds, or is it like 10 to 11?
Right.
But there is a good rule of thumb. I actually went to professional development about this.
Oh.
After 7 seconds, if they haven't answered, they most likely don't know it. So count to 7.
Does that count if they have full or empty pauses? Like if they're just completely empty, if they're like
They didn't measure that because this was based off a study that the school did. They didn't measure that.
Well, I like to decrease latency and response by using rapid naming tasks. So, like, you take a child and all of the age-appropriate common objects that you already know they have receptive vocabulary for, like ball, tiger, door,
Right.
car, keys, kite, all things that they know. And the point is that, like, it's confrontation naming, and you want to do rapid naming, and it's supposed to help with also reading.
Oh, okay.
And
I find when I do those assessment, that type of tests with my students,
Mhm.
just all different students, they all get so nervous. So I try to do that towards the end.
yeah.
Fun tip.
I do it
Yeah,
3
yeah.
times.
Oh,
so
wow.
I pick 10 cards and then I do it with them 3 times, front, forwards, and
Oh,
backwards.
okay.
And I'm like, okay, now you all by yourself. Let's see how fast you
Okay,
can
that's
go.
good. So you do a little test. Okay, good. You make it fun.
I teach it,
Yes,
teach it, and then
That's the dynamic assessment.
Yes.
Teach, right? Whereas a test, teach, retest.
Yes.
That's good.
To see like how quick they can generalize novel skills.
Yeah, and the quicker the better.
Right.
The quicker, the more indicative of their prognosis, I should
Mhm.
say. Okay.
Right. And then, like, we want to look at their demeanor and their impressions, things like that. So, what was their behavior? Were they, like, attached to the parent? Were they very independent? Were they silent? Were they highly social? Were they
Mhm.
impulsive with their behavior?
I like to look at eye contact.
eye contact. Yeah.
How and also how do they act towards the end of the assessment? You know, did they display test fatigue? Did they start fidgeting towards
Mhm.
the end?
Or did they become way more comfortable and then they
Right.
started, like, saying all these things that you initially wrote
Right.
down they couldn't?
Right. And then you're like, never mind.
Oopsie. And then recommendations and goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, if we break down assessment, we'll break it down now by age. So we'll start with the early intervention, right? The little ones. So that would count from 0 birth to 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we looking for with those children?
So we want to check their reflexes, see if they have any sort of like immature. So we're going to break it down: age, looking for, and then a standardized assessment.
Yep.
So if it's early intervention, like she said, 0 to 3, we're going to look to see, do they have any immature reflexes that are still lingering?
Yeah.
And we can get into that in a whole other like psychology episode.
Yeah. So like a type of reflex, just to like throw a few out there, like the palmer is like if their hand is open and you put your finger in their
Will they like
palm.
automatically grasp?
Right.
If you touch their cheek, will they deviate to that side?
Oh.
What was the Archer one? I can't remember all of
You're
them.
gonna have to Google that.
Yeah,
one.
you can look it up. Look it up, guys.
Archer. I don't know if I
So
remember
the
that.
next one, we want to see, like, do they react to their name if you call them at a distance? Do they deviate their head towards you? Do they acknowledge that you've called to them? Or do they just continue in their own space, in their own world? Joint attention is a big one. Are the
Yes.
two of you able to maintain attention to the same object or task? If I say, look, it's a puppy. Do you see the puppy? Pet the puppy. Here's the puppy. Are they engaging in the puppy, or are they just focused on maybe the rug that they're sitting on, or like something that's on their finger?
Right. And also, I thought this was interesting. Looking at a developmental chart, this is not straight off the dome. In terms of semantics between 1.5 to 2 years old, I thought this was interesting. They respond appropriately to yes/no questions with the head shake. I mean, I was pretty impressed.
But not all yes/no questions. It's gonna
Right.
be like,
Do
is
you
this a
want
duck?
this?
Is this a cow? Is this a horse?
Right, is this mommy or something?
Right. Yeah.
And in terms of their play skills, that is such a
But
big
like,
one.
is a penny larger than a quarter?
Interesting. I
Yeah.
have to think about
I
that.
see.
That is the wine.
Well, no, it's like
Mhm.
it causes it, even though you know the answer, it forces a visual and also
Right.
like a reference.
Yeah, to money.
Yeah.
Which usually these kids don't have a
No,
reference
not
to
at
money.
Well, I mean, I know quarters. I wanted those things in the machines
True.
when I was younger. I definitely could eye a quarter up if I had one handy.
Okay.
So then that's what we're going to be doing in order, like, that's just what we're going to go in there and we're going to assess the situation when we arrive upon seeing this child.
And we mentioned babbling, right? Babbling is a big one. Are they making sounds?
Right.
Okay.
And then I had a paper over here. Can you give me those papers? Maria's stealing my papers.
Steel papers.
Yeah, so that I want to go back to something I said before. It's important that you assess the situation because you and the child, you want to determine whether or not they have situational intelligence. So, have they looked around in their situation and have they altered their behavior based on the situation? Are they able to do that? Could they see a situation, a new person arrives, and therefore it's like exciting or someone you greet? Could they walk into a small, quiet area and see it's somewhere where I shouldn't have a loud voice? Or should they realize like that they're not speaking loud enough and speak up?
Mhm.
So situational intelligence is something informal I like to look at.
And that's definitely something to indicate when you're in your background information, and you could say like how they may have their behavior may have changed through your presence.
Yeah, based on a situation.
Right, and the parent or the teacher could say, "Oh, they're usually not like this. Oh, they're being
Mhm.
shy," or "Oh, I don't know what's going on with them today." And you just indicate that in the report.
Right. So then that's what we would look about if we were just walking in and assessing the situation. But a test, like a standardized assessment that you would give to a, I don't even know what test would it be?
I like to give the PLS 5.
Oh, how young can you do that test?
That's from birth
Oh.
to 5 years old. I want to say even 6.
I don't, yeah, like I mentioned in past episodes, I don't tend to do, I don't like evaluations.
All right, I'll talk about that briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So the PLS 5, what I like about it, it has 2 scores. You have your auditory comprehension, and then you have your expressive communication, so aka a receptive and an expressive. You start at one point, and then you keep going, obviously, right? And then once they get, I think, 6 zeros in a row, you stop.
Oh,
So
okay.
like that. And you don't have to start with 0. You could start, let's say they're 3, you could start around 1 years old. And
Mhm.
all the skills are hierarchy. So it starts with like question 1 being like startles to sound.
Oh,
And
okay.
then it gets more and more complex. So you
Oh.
can see where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do get a standard score for each one,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. So let's say you want to do auditory comprehension one day and expressive the other, and you want to get a score for one and not the other, you're able to do that. And then, of course, you can combine the scores too to get a total language score.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good, and I like that this assesses play skills too, because they'll come with some play materials, or you can use your own if you don't have a big budget, like what I did. Like what's going on with me, our school didn't have a big budget, so they just gave us the protocol and the test protocol and the
It's like put the
actual
bear
test.
on the block.
Yes, there you
Cover
go.
the bear with a blanket
Yeah.
so he goes to sleep.
Yeah, I
it's
like
nothing
that.
crazy. Oh, I
Yes.
thought that's what it was.
Yeah, no, that is that, and I
Okay,
like
yeah.
that assessment because it's
Mhm.
assessing different things like give the bear some ice cubes, give
Uh-huh.
me some. So you're looking at their play skills and also their expression and comprehension.
The thing I do like about assessments is it does kind of teach you like how to give directions, and it also teaches you how to interact and play. So like it's
Right.
kind of a step by step. I'm like, oh, he's hungry. Give him some pizza.
Right,
He
yeah.
wants that.
Right.
Oh, now he's tired. He had too much pizza. He needs a blanket. What do we do?
Yeah, and you get to see how they react with that. Do they understand hungry and thirsty?
Mm-hmm.
And are they, making that connection with, oh, there's a play cup here, let me give him some.
Right.
And I have a lot of kids who are, exposed to a second language, and I like to see how they do on that test, and they usually do very well. Like they're cute. Some take like the spoon and they like feed the bear. I'm like, aw, they're
They
cute.
use it too. Yeah.
Aw, yeah. So
Uh-huh.
that's a good assessment for early intervention. Even into preschool, I would say.
Yeah, so now we're going on to preschool, and if we're going to look for things, we're going to look for that conversational volley, where they ask and answer questions in order to propel a conversation and also provide comments and feedback to peers and adults during conversation. Do they do that? Yes or no? That's a big thing. Also, by 4 years old, we want to be sure that these kids are 100% intelligible to a not familiar listener.
That's my favorite thing to tell a parent when they're like, because preschool is that age of they might just be coming to you. The parent is like, oh, they've gotten speech for a year already. How much longer? And I'm like, when you go to the supermarket, does everyone understand what they're saying? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then not yet.
Right.
It's like
yes.
short little sweet discharge criteria. 100% of what they say is understood.
Right.
By 4 years old.
And then we also want to take a look at the expressive language, social skills, receptive language, and sound production.
Yeah.
So we talked about the sound component in our last episode about perception and phonology.
Where I was wrong.
Don't
deaffrication. But it's okay.
There's
no, not dwell.
Don't ruminate. So for preschool, we want to, like we said, be 100% intelligible. We also want to keep an eye out for those immature phonological processes, which again are the patterns that children use in order to mimic adult-like speech. If those have not been suppressed by a certain age, we want to make sure that they are eliminated. In order to target that, we both said we like to take a multilinguistic approach. So in terms of the other components, let's get to those. So we can look for these things. The formal test that you would use is probably the PLS 5 again.
And the Goldman
for stuff.
For speech.
And then for the informal, the best thing that you can do is elicit a spontaneous speech sample. And this is the best way that you can see not only how the child uses their sounds, but then also the length and complexity of their utterances and whether or not they speak freely and independently or if they require that to be pulled out of them.
That's a big point. In terms of spontaneous speech sample, I like one of my tricks is I try to ask the parent or the classroom teacher if it's in a preschool or someone who knows them better than I do, what do they like? And then I'll try to get that toy or I'll try to bring it up to them. So like a hot topic is pets. Kids love animals. They love talking about their pets, and I'll bring that up. And I always notice this, and this is just a general tip when I'm meeting new people. I notice little their lights up in their eyes, like they have their eyes light up. That's what I meant to say. Their eyes light up when they talk about this topic, and I'm like, that's the topic.
Oh, so that's the nonverbal cue that you look for.
Yes.
That's going to signal to you that they have a heightened interest in that subject. Okay. When their eyes light up.
Yep.
So if I'm like, pizza, you're like,
well, here's my topic. What kind of pizza do you like?
All the pizza.
But which ones?
I mean, I've been to all the pizza places in Brooklyn that are on any type of list. I like Neapolitan style, thin crust, Brooklyn.
And did you notice I did a lot of
Yeah, I did. What was that about?
Because I want you to do all the talking.
Oh.
Right? That's the whole point of the spontaneous
you're trying to elicit
sample.
a spontaneous speech sample from me.
And I've noticed, other SLPs or just supervised grad students, they try to talk a little too much. I guess the silent pausing or the little lulls in the conversation make people nervous. I'm like, no, let them be quiet because sometimes they need the processing time. Yeah, and then let them formulate their own thing that they want to talk about. So let them do the talking. You just sit there and
Right. So, but then also, did I tell you that I've been doing supervising at NYU?
Yes.
Okay, so what the girls have to do, or I just say girls automatically, what the clinicians have to do there is elicit a spontaneous speech sample. And what I noticed a lot of them doing, they'd be like, well, what's this? What's this?
Right.
And they would pause and look at the kid, and the kid's not going to say anything.
The kid's like, I already told you.
Yeah, or
it's
they're
wine
just
and cheese.
Yeah. And then they're like, tell me a story about the pig. And the kid's like, I don't even know. That's a big to-do. I couldn't even.
Right. So. I know there's a big, heat around wordless picture books, and I have one. It's called Frog Goes to Dinner. I'm not that huge of a fan because it's for some of our students, they're coming to us already, most likely they're having issues communicating. So you give them this wordless picture book, and they're kind of like stuck with just using those words related to the book. Like, okay, so like Frog goes to dinner, he orders wine. And then you're like turning the page, and it's like the same picture, and it's like, all right, I already told you the frog's at dinner. So
I don't
like,
know this book.
oh, you gotta. It's not that great. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, so you're not recommending. Oh,
Not
we didn't
really.
sink it or drink it for the wine.
Oh my gosh.
I say drink it.
Well, you're always gonna say.
Yeah,
drink it.
drink it.
I
Well,
say drink
one
it
day.
too, though. It's
So
very
here's-
sweet and good.
Yes, I like it.
Especially
Pinot
with
Noir
butter.
is my preference because it's an even-bodied wine.
Interesting.
So here are my ways that I like to elicit a spontaneous speech sample. The first thing I do is I lie to the kid.
Right.
So like I'll show a picture of a dog and I'll be like, this is a chicken and it likes to eat hay. And then they look at me like I'm
Oh.
crazy and then they're like, no. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I always do that, what?
Yeah.
And then the kids just think that's silly.
They think it's Little John.
Yeah. Well, my grandma used to do that all the time, so I think I copied her. And I do it.
Cheers
I
to
notice
Deb's
so
grandma.
much. Yes, cheers. And then so I might be like, this is a shoe, and I use it to brush my teeth. And then they're like, no, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? What do you
Absurdities.
use it
That is
for?
a strategy. Absurdities.
And then they'll tell you why it's wrong, and then we get them talking.
And how can they fix it, or what it should be?
Right, yeah. And then the other thing I like to do is a story. So I'll take the toys that I have at my disposal just in that preschool classroom, and I do this. This is the framework. Once there was a blank who wanted to blank, but blank, so blank, finally blank.
All right. I feel like you need to fill in those blanks for us. people
Okay,
here.
so once there was a pig who wanted to be in the circus, but he didn't know how to ride a bike, so he practiced and practiced and practiced every day, and finally he was able to ride a bike in the circus. The end. So it's once there was a who wanted to, but so finally.
Okay, so you're sequencing a little. You're providing them a nice little short
And
and
I have
sweet story.
toys in front of me.
Oh.
So I'm like, once there was a pig who wanted to be friends with a dog, but he didn't know how to bark, so then he practiced, and then he went up to the dog and went woof, and they became friends. And
So
finally
you're just
they were friends.
you're kind of like modeling what you want for them to
And I'm
do.
like, can you tell me that story?
Oh,
I'm
you want
giving
them
them a story.
Oh, okay.
And then they can repeat it back to me. Do they have all of the events in appropriate sequence with all of the details that I gave them? Did they use the toys? Did they lose confidence and then get silly and then say something on a tangent? Something
Right.
like that.
Oh,
And
I
did
like
they
that.
produce all the sounds? And did they use helping verbs?
Helping verbs?
And articles.
Love helping verbs.
Then I like to look at pictured actions and pictured emotions. So they're going to describe the pictured actions, and I can see if they use appropriate pronouns, if they use the correct
I love
article,
pictured actions too.
and if they
What are they
use
doing?
the verb to be, and then like the present progressive.
And
And
you
then-
can even do it when you're playing with them. What am I doing? Like I like it with Play-Doh because you can roll Play-Doh, you
Yeah.
can cut it, you can make shapes. Love Play-Doh.
Yeah,
And
lots
it's
of
cheap.
actions with Play-Doh. I like to make Play-Doh.
Wow, that's fancy.
It's fun. And then the last thing I like to use for preschool is pictured emotions, because not only are you going to describe the emotion based on a nonverbal cue, they're going to provide a rationale for as to why they might feel that way
Right.
and what can make them feel better. And I'm going to talk about this more later, but the way they describe how other people feel probably has to do with how they feel.
Interesting.
So think about that.
Yeah, of course.
And then the next thing we're going to do is get to school age speech and language. So at this point, you're
Fun.
probably going to take the self, which is ages 5 to 21, or the Goldman-Frista test of articulation, if it's for speech sounds.
Golden Fristo for speech, self for language.
Mhm.
And then also, just as a side note, all the students or clients you're assessing should have an oral mechanism, right? Just a
Right,
test.
oral motor exam.
Yes,
Yeah.
oral motor examination.
Mm-hmm.
Tongue strength, lingual strength, whatever you want to call it, jaw.
Stability and like
stability.
able to deviate the jaw without
Mhm.
moving the whole head.
And good old puttica. No one can do that.
Diadokinetic rate.
Yeah, no one can do
I
that.
say buttercup,
Yeah.
buttercup.
But I like to try puttica. Start high, then go low.
Oh, yeah. I use it more in the nursing home than I do in the kids setting.
Yeah.
And then, so if we're at school age speech and language, so we're going to want to, for informal then, we're going to want to get a writing sample from them, and then listening comprehension questions, so like maybe like a storytelling podcast could be useful, and then have some prepared questions so that they can answer things that they hear. because maybe they are very good at hearing things and learning like I am. And then a reading comprehension thing, even if it's just that they're reading a picture and they're comprehending it. So if it's like a pictureless book and then you're asking them questions about that, like, did the pig eat the fly? Like, is there a picture that tells you that?
I didn't read the whole book, but
But
also
like
the self has an understanding spoken paragraphs subtest. And that's
so there
what's
you go.
good about the self 4 and 5. They're both pretty good. Not only does it test such a wide range of ages and has 2 different assessments. So it's like 5 to 8 and then 9 to 21. So it is broken up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, similar to the
there's
that's our timer. Let me
Our
just wrap
30-minute
this thought up.
timer went off. I was hoping it'd be louder so the audience
Oh,
could hear.
yeah. Well, timer went off.
Our 30-minute timer went off, so we decided this is halfway through the show.
Okay, should I not finish my point though? But each subtest within the self gives you individual standard scores. So even if you just want to give like 2 subtests, like reading and vocabulary, you can get scores just for those specific skills. So that's good.
Yeah, okay, so then that's what we'll do. So we'll do our halfway mark, we'll finish our last point, we'll stop where we are, we'll do some housekeeping. If you're driving, this is probably a good time to pause and then check back in with us for the second half of the show. But first, listen to all the information that we want to give you. So, go ahead, Maria, you take it off.
Okay, I'm not that Insta-famous yet. So, but follow me on Instagram. My handle is Maria _KOTSONISSLP.
And I am on Instagram. I have a bunch of Instagrams. So I post videos of myself doing speech therapy under Deborah Brooks, CCC, SLP. That's Deborah, like Deborah, not like Debra.
Okay.
So it's DEBORAH. And then I have another Instagram that's Color in Speech, and that just kind of displays my products that are for speech and coloring. I also have a YouTube channel under Miss MS Deb DEB SLP. And I also, finally, you can check me out on Patreon, and this is where you can choose a subscription that gets you certain rewards based on the materials that I'm offering, from videos to handouts to more podcasts and things like that.
Great.
Okay. So then we have a challenge for everyone else. That's our second piece of housekeeping.
Fun Friday. This Friday coming up, May 25th, 5:25.
Yeah, we were wondering if we should do a fun challenge. So what we would like...
We are going to do a fun challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are fun.
Right.
And random. That's why we want you to post a picture of cheese.
Yeah, just post a picture of cheese.
Like in your salad.
Or your favorite
plain.
cheese.
Yeah, or
It could
draw a
be
picture
clip art.
cheese.
You can draw the cheese. It could be the stinky cheese from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, just with the cheese touch.
Yeah.
And so if you upload a picture of cheese to your Instagram and you use the hashtag SLPs wine and cheese, SLPSWINEANDCHEESE, nailed it. That hashtag. And then also tag both Maria and myself. I'm going to make an Instagram for this podcast, but I just haven't yet. And we're going to pick a winner on Saturday, and the winner will get a bottle of wine and cheese from us.
Yeah, and feel free to write anything you want with the cheese picture, like,
Yeah.
hey, I love this cheese, or like, hey, I love this cheese, and I want to hear more of this on your podcast, or really.
Or just don't
totally up
even
to
say
you.
anything but the hashtag, because we're just trying to break the internet. We just
Okay.
want everything flooded with cheese, and people wonder, like, what the heck's going on.
Right.
That'd be fun. But then, yeah, hopefully you guys participate. I know I will.
I will too. So the winner's going to get, obviously, a bottle of wine and cheese. What's better than that? And also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. It's on iTunes. Rate us and review us. And we want to hear your thoughts, so you could obviously slide into our DM.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to take the other way, you could do slpswineandcheese@gmail.com.
Yeah, and just send us an email. Let us know if there's something that you liked, something that you didn't like, if there's an error that you found, or if you have any...
more errors!
If if you have any suggestions for future topics or anything at all, if you just want to say hi, it does make my day to get these emails.
Me too.
Because, like, most of the time I get emails that are like, Deb, you didn't sign this line. Deb, we need this report. Deb, the dog peed on the floor.
Nice.
So, like, if I get an email saying, you helped me get through my day,
Yeah.
that's helpful. So,
Yeah, same
keep
here.
it coming.
Keep it coming.
I think, is that all of our housekeeping?
I feel like, yeah, that's definitely all of our housekeeping. We just wanted to talk about, we talked about reading comprehension.
So, we're
right?
back in it.
We're back
Okay.
into school age. Let's wrap this up because we got some more interesting stuff down the list.
So we're in
reading
school age
comprehension,
speech and
yeah.
language. We already said that you can do the self, that's a good assessment, or the Goldman-Fristow. We said informally, a writing sample is a good way to see the child's use of written expressive language, if they have issues with spelling, if they leave words out, and if they don't proofread.
Right, yeah, good.
And then
Also, I think this sounds like, oh my god, they want me to do all these things. They don't have to happen all in one
right.
assessment,
Yeah,
right?
anxiety
Especially if
happens
you-
when you think you have to do everything right now.
That's right.
So don't give them anxiety.
Yeah, don't give yourself anxiety.
That too.
So just, break it up, whether you want to do receptive first, then expressive, or, a little bit of both, however you want to go about it. So remember that. So we have reading comprehension, which we said is also measured on the self if you want standardized scores, and spontaneous narrative sample. So narratives are really important to see their organization, how, their narratives, does it have a clear-cut beginning, middle, end, and narratives develop as the students get older. There's tons of assessments out there on narratives if you just Google narrative assessment, and you could look at the macro structure, the micro structure, which those assessments further explain that, but you could talk about, did they expand on the characters, and you just really hone in on their narrative skills. So, this is great because if you don't have a standardized formal assessment on hand, because those are pricey, this is a pretty, cheaper alternative.
Yeah, you can just do it with nothing at all. You can just have a prompt that you want them to write about. If they're struggling and they require some sort of structure in order to create a story, you can use that same structure that I already said, that was once there was a blank, who wanted to blank, but blank, so blank, finally blank. And it works for all ages. I've used that from preschool to teenagers.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could look at, record what they're saying. I like to record right on my phone. I usually tell the student, is it okay if I record you? Just because, who wants to be recorded and they don't even know?
Yeah, I always tell everyone I'm going to record you. But everyone looks at what you're doing with your phone constantly because they're like, what's on there? So the kids always know if you are, so don't try to be sneaky.
I know. I have tried that before. And the kid is just like, I know you're recording me. And I was like, well, you still didn't say your speech sounds the right way. I try to fix it.
I would be like, well, I have to show mommy all the stuff that we did in speech. I want to show her, you know how to do this sound. Now sit up and let's go.
All right.
Something like
That's
that.
a good one.
But I brought Frankie with me to therapy today. And I was taking a video, and then I realized my video was getting long, so I wanted to pause it and start it again. But Frankie was sleeping on my lap, and also the kid was involved in what he was doing, so I didn't want to disrupt anyone. So I had no shoes on because I was in the house, and I hit record, stop and record again with my toe.
Use what works.
And the kid was like, how come you use your toe to do that?
That's a good question. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, well, I was trying to be considerate.
And just so we could briefly talk about fluency, usually,
I love fluency just outside of stuttering.
We're going to definitely have a fluency stuttering episode. But again, a lot of this applies to fluency too. Definitely your reading. If you want to do a reading passage, I like the Rainbow Passage. It has all the speech sounds in it. You could just Google it, and it's great for our TIC, for the assessing the speech sounds, and stuttering to see if they stutter on a specific sound. But
I like to do, I don't do the Rainbow Passage, but I do remember that from school.
Yes.
And I like to give them a book that has dialogue or a play, and there is a play on my website if you guys want it. It's called Lions Do Lunch. It's kind of a little bit tricky to read, so I would say second grade or older. But fluency is, so if somebody has a disfluency, that would be characterized, it's a disruption in speech. So it would be characterized by stops, prolongations, and repetitions. So most people think that's all that fluency is, but fluency is accurate decoding with context-appropriate prosody. So you're not actually being a fluent reader unless you match the emotions of the lines that you're reading. So if it says, "Oh my gosh," said the worm, that's not fluent. That wouldn't count. It shouldn't count as fluency score because you're not demonstrating comprehension through your prosody. Maybe you're just hyperlexic and you're just saying these words, but you don't comprehend the idea.
So you mean fluency in terms of reading, not stuttering.
Reading fluency.
Yes. Okay.
But then also, so if you teach kids to have context-appropriate prosody, then that's going to make them more fluent, even if they do stutter, because emotionally charged words are more fluent because it stems from the emotional center of your brain rather than the motoric.
Okay.
And that's where that deficit is.
Some emotionally charged words make them more disfluent, though. Could go either way.
Well, I mean, emotionally charged prosody and phrases. So they're not really going to stutter if you have them. Like, that's why actors and singers are always like, do you know that so-and-so stuttered?
Right.
But they don't now that they sing opera or they do Shakespeare. Well, that's because that speech pattern comes from the emotional centers of their brain rather than the motoric. So if you're like, oh my goodness, a kid's not going to really stutter on that.
Or when they sing.
Or when they sing, because that's got melodic intonation.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a follow-up episode on this. We have so much to say about that. Also, just so we wrap up the fluency combo, a formal or a standardized score for fluency would be the SSI, the Stuttering Severity Index. So you could look out for that if you're looking
And that looks at like the percent syllables stuttered, right?
Yeah, it also looks at like extraneous body movements. There's 2 or 3 reading passages on there, and then you get a whole score and percentage, and it'll help you grade it under severe, moderate, moderately severe, so you don't have to just like guess. What do I think, right? So, yeah, so going into what we think. I know that you have been reading this awesome book. It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolynn.
Yeah, I'm glad you said his name because I never even tried to before.
All right.
But yeah, he wrote this book, and it's about how inherited family trauma shapes who we are and how to end the cycle. So it does sound like I have a lot of issues, but it's a very interesting book because this individual talks a tremendous amount about core language, which is kind of like the overarching theme of what is going on internally within you, based on the things that you say, or internally within the individual based on the things that they say, based on their core language. It declares the things that are undeclared.
Because language is stored in your brain, right? We know that. And how you're feeling and your thoughts are obviously going to make their way out somehow, right?
Yeah.
And it's language. It makes their
whether
make their
it's
way
verbal
out
or not
language,
verbal.
right?
Yeah.
Behavior being one of them.
Yeah, because like,
too,
so there's many behaviors that you can look at that are going to give you clues and insight. So like, for instance, if somebody feels angry, that means that they feel violated. So that means, so anger is usually connected to violation. So either something has happened to them that's not fair, or something that happened to them that that like they feel like they're losing. So violation, and then
See, I have heard or have read that anger stems from fear. I mean, we were talking about the same thing, but differently.
Everything you do in fear or love. Do you wake up every day because you love your job, or do you wake up every day because you're afraid to get fired?
Could it be both? Yes,
I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe. But I think more so, like, I'm definitely not afraid of getting fired.
Okay.
But, like, don't fire me. I'm not in the mood. I have lots of things that I have to get done.
Yes, we have a lot. We have a busy list.
Yeah. So I think that it's really important, like, if we're going to talk about assessing other people, the first person that you need to assess is yourself.
Can we pause for effect there?
I shouldn't laugh. A moment of silence for assessing yourself.
Yeah, actually, let's do that. Sit
Mhm.
here for 1 or 2 seconds, and that shows. Though, let's get comfortable with uncomfortable silences.
Well,
'cause
you know,
we need
dead
these-
air is not good in radio.
True. That's why I said 2 seconds. So
Okay,
sit
ready?
here and assess yourself. What did you find? What word popped in your head?
Breathe.
Think about it. Breathe. Interesting.
I just
I
love
was-
to breathe.
I was thinking I'm hot.
You're hot? Oh,
Yeah.
want me to turn the air on?
Nah, it's
I
all
think
right.
it would make noise on the microphone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, so assessing the situation means like you have situational intelligence, but assessing yourself means that you have intrapersonal intelligence. And this is self-awareness or introspection. You're aware of your personal emotions, motivations, beliefs, and goals.
Hashtag goals.
Mhm.
Oh, speaking of goals.
We'll get to goals.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a whole goals episode.
Yeah.
How are we gonna? We were just talking so fast in the first 30 minutes that we couldn't have smushed anything else in here.
I'm just gonna throw it in there because I feel like now's my time.
Okay.
After your amazing assessment that's dynamic and it's culturally competent, which we'll talk about next time, and you want to formulate some awesome goals, and you want those to be SMART goals. Specific, what exactly do you want the client to do? Do you want them to say 2 words, sequence? Say what you want them to do. That's SM, measurable. 4 out of 5 trials, 80% accuracy, 90% accuracy. You want it to be achievable, so I personally prefer to do a goal that's a little less complex so the child or client can meet them and then generalize them. And then you want it to be relevant. Relevant means based off your assessment. So if you assessed, let's say, phonology and artic, you want goals to reflect that, and then you want T for time, so you want to measure over time. So like in 6 months, in a year. So that's it. Going back to goals for
Can you pass
yourself.
me the wine then?
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt you, and then I didn't want to reach. Thank you.
Right.
So it's important to also keep in mind when it comes to the goals, like if you're at the school age level, like make sure that your goals relate to the language experiences that they're going to have in the school.
Right.
Don't just make things fancy strictly based off speech and language stuff. Go look at Common Core, say what you want about it, but it's
Right.
what's going on in the schools.
Yeah.
See what they're required to do
Mm-hmm.
in the language and listening aspect of Common Core based on their grade, and then integrate that into your goals. And they're all good things. It's like label character emotions, provide a rationale, ask and answer questions to propel a conversation over second grade topics, things like that. It's nothing that's like not relevant to speech,
Right.
and you should be considered of like the type of language the child is required to use.
Because
But,
you want it to be related. You want it to be functional. You want to
Yeah.
work on a skill that they're going to actually use.
Absolutely.
So, going back, you want to assess yourself.
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah, assess yourself. Be aware of how you feel, and because people who understand their own feelings are good at helping others understand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the core language complaint is something that's very indicative of your current internal emotional state. So
Okay.
what you're saying is, if I asked you the question is like, what is your greatest complaint about work? What would yours be,
I'm
Mariam?
tired.
You're tired.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so tired, so exhaustion.
Mhm.
So maybe you feel like a
Fatigue.
little bit drained.
Yeah.
And like you're like giving out a lot of energy, and maybe you're not getting a lot back.
Right. But that's on me. I need to go to bed earlier. I need to...
So now that's your level of
Progressive.
accountability.
Yeah.
So some people have an internal locus of control, and some people have an external locus of
That
control.
means they blame themselves or they blame others. I'm
Yeah.
a blamer of myself.
Me too. I blame myself for everything, which I think makes you a way better person, because blaming
Right.
the universe is just a snooze fest.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, the whole universe got together and they were like, we really hate Georgia. Let's go get her.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I used to always have this like conditional if-then response to any type of relationship that I was in, until I got into this perfect one with Mike Racine. No complaints.
Snooze.
Except no, he leaves his socks everywhere. It's insane.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna spend the rest of my life picking up Mike's socks.
We need some visual supports.
Even so, he would be like, "What do you think? I'm stupid?" Like he just like.
I'm like, well, you don't know how to pick up your socks.
I'd
So
be
what
like,
does
well,
that
I
tell
don't
me?
know. Do you think you're stupid? It is a
Interesting.
part of your core language. It's your core complaint. The fact that you think other people think you're stupid.
Interesting.
But yeah, I used to always have this conditional if then response that like if this happens, then everything will be ruined. And ruined was my core language. It was it was like my overarching theme of whatever was bothering me, and that means like things that were gonna get ruined. And I used to, I guess, think that there was this point of doom that there was no coming back from, and now I've kind of grown past that, and I'm like, what is gonna happen? Nothing is doomed.
Right.
But your core language, it declares the undeclared, and it gives clues in the form of emotionally charged words. Mine was ruined, and then for Maria, I think we figured out hers is
I'm
worried. She's worried about everything. You know, worry is the misuse of imagination.
Interesting.
You're just thinking of things that you don't want to happen.
Oh my god, that is so true.
Yeah.
I do that.
And that's why, like, very creative people are worriers.
Oh,
because
I don't know if I
they-
consider myself creative, but other people tell me I'm creative, and I'm like,
Well, maybe
really?
you're
I don't see it.
innovative. Maybe you find creative ways of using what's at your disposal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's a very creative thing.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I think a good point to bring up is, since we are talking about self-reflection, what has helped me in the past and still does is journaling. Like I write stuff out, and I like to write out like what I'm feeling, and that helps actually
Yeah.
recharge me. That is definitely
And then you can
energy.
take your own language sample. You can
right,
what
right.
your core
Yeah,
language
what
is.
are my core
And like,
words?
do you write so fast that you skip words that you think are there? Do you need to take a time and like slow down? Or are you writing constantly negative things? Let's
Yeah.
remember that your mind will believe everything you tell
Yeah.
it. And negative journaling is actually one of the most detrimental things that you can do to
Wow.
yourself because you're ruminating now.
Right.
And you're using your negative thoughts as a way of being like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Right.
So
'Cause when
don't do that.
Don't do that. Go back to your language sample and make sure it's not negative, because your thoughts become things. Like what you're
Yeah.
thinking becomes what
Yeah.
you're doing and what you're attracting to yourself.
Yeah, you are your thoughts, and your thoughts are you.
Right.
But I did hear this one quote that I love, and it says that our lives are stories that we create every second of every day, and the best stories are written by those who are barely holding on to their sanity.
Interesting.
So
it's
don't feel
okay
bad
that
about
you're
yourself
crazy.
to not. Yeah, I'm crazy. I know I am. I'm nuts. So like, and I don't want to feel bad about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So also, your core language can be indicative through nonverbal communication, such as physical sensations, behaviors, emotions, impulses, and symptoms of illness.
Mhm.
So what you're thinking and what you're feeling is going to present on your body with these things. So if
Right.
you are not good within yourself, you're really going to struggle helping somebody else.
Right.
You know, when the plane's going down, you got to grab your oxygen
Yes.
mask before you can help somebody else.
And I think that's important advice to tell a parent, because a lot of parents are always putting their kids first, which
Yeah.
I'm not a parent, so I'm not blaming them, but that is, a common thing, and you want the parent to start to self-reflect too. Like if their child has a disability, start thinking of how they can help themselves to in turn help their child.
Right, and also reflect on how this individual is describing their child. Like, are they
Right.
saying things that are going to put them in a situation where they're thinking to themselves, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. I showed a picture of a kid of soccer to a kid today, and he was like, and then one of the last questions was, tell me about a sport that you played, and he was like, I did play soccer, but not well.
Aww.
And I was like, that was a very mature sentence for you, so you
Right.
certainly heard somebody else say that, and
Right.
you were probably the best soccer player I ever saw.
Right. Yeah.
I would have just said that. But then maybe people will say I'm encouraging like millennials or something.
We
But
need
yeah,
that
so
fine line. We need that balance.
yeah, we just want to make sure you're not creating any self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
Because like your core language can be indicative of depression, despair, anxiety. All of these are emotionally charged words. and they're the keys to undeclarative memories and experiences. So
Right.
if you want to take a good sample from a kid, show them a bunch of pictured emotions, and then have them label the emotion, and then provide a situation that would have caused that individual to feel that way, and you're going to get an idea of what makes them feel certain ways.
Right.
Like maybe some girl is going to be like, maybe she's crying because no one likes her shirt.
Aww.
Or maybe a boy will be like, maybe he's crying because nobody wanted to play the game with him.
Right.
Or, gender neutral people will just be like, maybe they're crying because they got hurt. We don't want to say partial to gender. But yeah, so it's really important to listen to a child's core language. Are they primarily speaking about emotions? Are they primarily angry? Are they primarily hopeful, excited, imaginative, creative? How are they speaking? What is the content of their thought process?
Right. And your own, right?
And your
so
own. What are you saying to yourself?
Right. What are you saying to yourself?
What's your greatest complaint? What's your
Right.
core language complaint?
Again, I'm going to go with nervous, worried, and tired.
Nervous, worried, and tired.
So I guess I have to work on that, right? And then it's like problem solving. Like I'm aware now of my core word, and now I want to make goals for myself, and I want to do things to help decrease my feelings of feeling worried and nervous and tired. So like journaling helps with all of that. Deep breathing helps with all of that. Going to yoga helps with all of that.
Oh, I love yoga.
Yes.
My number one goal in life is to be able to do a handstand
Oh,
independently.
okay.
I'm working on it.
Working on that.
I'm like halfway there. I can stand independently for like 3 to 4 seconds. Against a wall, I can stand very long, like 3 minutes.
The wall, I think, it makes you like, I don't know.
A little dependent on the
Yeah,
wall.
there we go.
Yeah, I like move back and forth between
Right.
the wall.
Go without the wall. Just go without it.
I'm
So
trying.
speaking of movement, let's go into our tips and tricks.
Mhm.
Start to wrap it up. So I'll go first because my
Okay,
tip
because I
and
didn't think
trick.
of one yet.
Oh, okay. You hopefully
Take
get
long,
inspired by
speak
mine.
slow.
Okay. My tip and trick is that I give the client a movement activity before we sit down at the table. So that could be as simple as some jumping jacks, stretching, deep breathing. I count deep breathing. I like this trick where I do somewhat little ones, but even some of like the preteens like this one, take their hands and you say, all right, we're going to make a rainbow, and you pretend to like put paint on your hands, and then you put your hands up, straight up over your head, inhale,
That's beautiful.
and then you exhale and make an
rainbow.
arch, and you make a rainbow in the sky.
That is fantastic.
So
I'm doing it tomorrow.
Yes, so you're imagining it.
Yes.
AKA, you don't need to pay for any materials.
Right.
I
right.
see very
But
few
you're
of
pairing
those.
your words with your
Right.
like your thought process.
Right,
And
so
pictures.
we're
Yes, I love
inhaling,
it.
up, straight
And
arms
breathing.
overhead. Exhale, let's make a rainbow.
I'm
I like,
making a rainbow.
yeah, so that's
Mhm.
deep breathing, making a rainbow. And you could use that with, fluency to calm them down, like vocal warm-ups, like that. And then if you have kids on the spectrum, I love the therapy ball. Have them sit on it and bounce on it,
Oh.
or on their belly, and make sure their hands are out and roll. But consult with the OT before you start doing all these sensory things. Like double check that that's okay to do with them.
Right.
So I like to do some type of movement before we're sitting. That's my tip or trick.
And mine is to use the phrase "Where's my nose?" or "Find
Okay.
my nose."
Okay.
Very
For them
often,
to look at you, because I'm really looking
Yeah.
at your nose.
very often, people are like, "Find my eyes, find my eyes,"
Ooh, right.
and that makes kids feel uncomfortable. But if you tell them
Yes.
to look at your nose, then they can stare at you, and they see your lips better than they do if they stare at your eyes, and
And
they're
they-
gonna feel less uncomfortable.
And they see that I need a nose strip ASAP. I'm just kidding.
No, I bought those, and it didn't even dry up on my nose. It just kept falling off. It didn't do anything. I want one of those.
Aztec clay mask on Amazon is awesome.
Oh, did they pay you to say that?
No, but I just love it.
I didn't even get drunk this episode. I feel like we should just keep going.
Okay.
But no, we gotta stay within our time,
yeah.
right?
So you like to have them look at your nose. I like that.
Yeah,
Just
say, look at my nose,
your
find my nose. Where's my nose? Or I'll be like, I don't have a nose. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, just
What?
lie to them. It's funny. And then you're like, I tricked you. They get into it. But yeah, so our closing quote. What's our closing quote? You picked this one
Oh,
today.
I did.
Maria's the star.
This is from who's our homie
Our
Buddha.
our Biffle, our best friend for life.
Our Biffle Buddha.
I'm just eating cheese by the handful now.
Yeah.
I ate all the crackers
great.
already.
Yeah, no worries.
Because I am not fasting intermittently.
I am. Well, I did drink a little bit, but just for the podcast.
No, she drank all the wine. That's why I didn't even get buzzed.
Right. It's all me. So our quote is, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. And what you imagine, you create.
Yeah, that's great. And then also going back to everything we said, so like if you tell yourself something, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel something, that child is going to mirror your behavior.
Right. If
So
you're
you're-
anxious, and
then
I
you-
notice that if you're anxious or you're nervous,
Yeah.
they kind of feed off of that. So you have to relax.
Exactly.
Paint your own rainbow before you walk
Just
into
go
your
in there
room.
and assess the situation. What's going on here? We
Right.
got to take everything one step at a time.
You're like, party's here. I'm
yeah,
here to see what's
exactly.
happening.
That's what's going
Yeah,
on.
come in with energy and excitement.
Mm-hmm. Because what you imagine, you will create. So,
Right.
like, in your head, have this wonderful session, and that's what's going to happen. But if you're like, oh my god, he's not going to talk to me, and the
Right.
parent mother's
Yeah.
going to be all, like, mean, and that's going to happen.
Right.
So, don't let that happen.
Yep. All
Yeah.
right.
And that's been our latest episode of SLP's Wine and Cheese. I'm Deb.
And I'm Maria.
See you next time.
Yes.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Be sure to tune in next Wednesday when we have Megan Morales. We went to grad school with Megan. She lives in Brooklyn. She's a bilingual evaluator. And we're going to be drinking sangria and eating some cheese. So listen next week.